Hi everyone, Josh Edwards here for the United Region, and today is a very special day, for me at least, and a day I want to share. It actually marks the anniversary or the start of a life that touched so many others, that touched lives all over the world, touched lives, I guess you could say here in Florida in the future, it touched lives in over 100 countries. The life I'm talking about is about a man by the name of Jim Henson. And for those of you who might recognize this frog here on this book of his biography, you are right. This man's name is Jim Henson, and he is who I call the Muppet Man. It was he that was not only the original Kermit the Frog, he created the Muppets. He helped make characters for Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock. His company, which he started, has been taken by his family and has made wonderful shows for children and families. I wanted to celebrate because, as I mentioned, it's his birthday. And he was born 1934, September 24th, this very day. And the reason I am so fascinated or so, I don't know the right word, I find it so important to me is because Jim Henson was my inspiration. And in a way, his influence was an inspiration to people all over the United States and, as I mentioned, people all over the world. And I'm going to get to that. When he was a little boy, like myself, growing up in Mississippi, when we were both little boys, not when I never grew up in Mississippi, Jim always wanted to be in television. And he ended up doing a puppet show in college, which would kick off the Muppets back in 1955, called Sam and Friends. And this was before Kermit was the frog that you all know. He was more abstract and lizard-like. He didn't have the collar or anything. And he did commercials and some movie pieces, but nothing really, long term. But he did well, for a little while. And then a children's television network that was just starting out asked him to make characters for a new upcoming show. And I bet you can guess which one this is. It's a show children have watched for decades, since 1969. And they said, this is the amazing part. And this would have made it a big difference in the world today if Jim wasn't involved. The people of that network said if they didn't get Jim to do their characters, they wouldn't use puppets. That means a lot of us would know characters like Bert and Ernie or Cookie Monster or Grover. The world would be very different, at least for children's television. And, as I'm sure you could guess by now, Jim Henson ended up making characters for a children's show called Sesame Street, which has been around since November 1969. And he thought it'd last just a few years, but it ended up being one of the longest running shows on television. As far as I know, one of the most positive and educating, at least around then in my day. But if I sound a little different, I apologize. I am a little tickle in my throat. I'm a little under the weather. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. During the progress, Jim still worried he'd be only known as a kiddie puppeteer. He'd never get to do the work he wanted. He wanted the Muppets to appeal to adults as well as children. He was trying to do an actual Muppet show. Every network in the United States turned him down. But a very successful businessman in London, England, who enjoyed the occasional risk, took a chance on Jim Henson's Muppets, and for 5 successful years, the Muppet Show ran wild all over the world. It was seen in over 100 countries, and at least from what I heard on a memorial special for Jim in 1990, Sesame Street was seen in over 100 countries. If it still isn't today, says a lot about his work. It says a lot about the influence that we've had today about looking at each other as how even though we all look different, we're all the same, and how we can all live together, and how we get to know each other, talk to each other. As the singer Harry Belafonte once said, who once worked with Jim, we can turn the world around. He sang that at Jim Henson's memorial. It's a song he did on the Muppet Show with him. It's truly wonderful, very influential. Jim Henson had a quote. He said, if I remember correctly, "My goal is to leave this world a little better than when I started." I'm probably a little off, but that was one of a few things Jim Henson and I have in common. I hope that the United Region, I hope my advocating for people with autism and advocating for equity and equal opportunity in general can leave this world looking a little better than the one I first started growing up in. And speaking of autism, I can't confirm. I have no solid evidence to back me up, but I did a little research, and I remembered when I was in college, taking college courses, that it's possible that Jim Henson may have lived with Asperger's syndrome or some form of autism on the spectrum. I can't say, but from what I understand, it's possible that while he was never diagnosed, he could have lived with autism. And that might explain the kinship, or I don't know, maybe I just related so much to his work, I don't know. But if he was, I like to think he could be used as a very positive role model or an example of the possibilities that anyone can have when they pursue something with the right intentions and the right way to look at things and to look at people. A little before the show ended, Jim had made a few movies. Some with the Muppets, some without. A few of you may know the movie The Labyrinth. One in particular I have always cherished since I was a child was the Muppet movie, the very first Muppet movie, 1979. And I've loved it because, well, as I said, Jim Henson was my inspiration, but I can't say for certain, but there's a pretty good chance if it wasn't for him, I might not be doing the kind of work I am today. I wouldn't be as dedicated or involved as I am with children and with families and children. Jim made me love wanting to be involved in comedy and music, making people happy. I saw the expression that can be found in the family through his characters. I saw people can live together and love together and learn together. And Jim gave me that dream. Three different points of my life. The Muppet movie taught me a lesson I never saw, I never learned or understood before. As a boy, I knew I knew what kind of dream I had. I wanted to be involved in entertainment. I wanted to make people happy. And two, I learned that I wanted to have I learned that I wanted to have a family or people that shared the same dream, and that dream was the kind that got better the, the more people you shared it with. And the third lesson I learned was that the best dream anyone can have is any dream that involves making people happy. Jim taught me that and probably a few other things too. And I'm sure he's taught you a few things without knowing it too. He was a he didn't have a degree, but he was a very good teacher, and he made mistakes in his life. He's human, no less than anyone else. But I like to think, faults and all, he was one of the people we needed. And I like to think that before he died in 1990, he would have been happy with his work, and he'd be happy with the way he left the world. I just hope that we can still have that today. We can have a world where we look at each other and say we are different and the same. Sounds like a song you wrote. But yeah, we have to do that. People with autism, people, who different color skin, people coming from other countries. We have to we have to look at each other as one people. That's something I think Jim wanted. And it's something we need. After all, the world will keep turning, but I think we need to turn it around. A little joke there. Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Jim Henson. Happy birthday. And before we go, I have one little thing to say. One final lesson Jim taught me was that life's like a movie. You write your own ending. Jim kept believing, he kept pretending, and however long it took, he did just what he wanted to do. He was a lover, he was a dreamer, just like me, and I bet just like you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for letting me share. I'm very grateful to have spent this time with you. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll get into more self-care videos very soon. You all take care. Have a good night.